So, welcome to episode 15 of Table Talk. We've got Mike Jozoff. That's how you say your name, right?
Yep,
That's
you
correct.
got it.
LA, you won the WSOPC LA champion. Came out of nowhere in 2022, and since then you've just been firing on all cylinders. So, do you want to give the viewers a bit of a rundown of your poker career so far?
Yeah, you kind of nailed it. At least the coming out of nowhere part. I guess I started playing when I was in college. I'm 23 now, so I started playing when I was about 17, 18. Started playing cash games with my friends, like $20 buy-ins. Fell in love with the game. Started watching a bunch of YouTube videos, Negreanu, like the old school clips and stuff, high stakes poker and all that. Started playing online a bit when I was in college. Depositing like a couple $100 at a time. I mean, at that time, my net worth is probably $1,500. That might even be generous. Maybe it was like 800 stuff. But yeah, deposit like half my net worth as a freshman in college, get crushed because no idea how to play. But humbling experience, and eventually read a few poker books, watched a few videos, had some semblance of how like the basics worked. Started playing a little bit more live cash, started getting closer to breaking even online, and sort of started building up a roll from zero when I was about 18 with a fake ID, to be full transparency, in LA, because in the States got to be 21, but couldn't play live tournaments, obviously underage, but you could kind of get away with playing live cash.
Right.
But yeah, I was playing some online stuff and some live cash, and yeah, built up a little bit of a roll. Had a couple tournament scores online, nothing too crazy, but just enough to be able to get me to like being able to play 5-10 live and stuff, and probably not that responsibly, but I was playing it. And yeah, so basically skip ahead a few years. Basically just playing primarily live cash, but I still really enjoy tournaments. Hadn't studied as much with tournaments. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty deep in the streets of I'm using PO Solver at this point, and
Right.
and taking things more seriously, and stopped going to class and stuff. But yeah, so then eventually, when I turned 21, it was during COVID, and when I turned 21, there was nothing to actually play live, so it was kind of frustrating because I was like, I remember when I was 18, I was like, oh, I just can't wait to turn 21 and play all these live tournaments. It's going to be great. So I basically had to start playing live tournaments when I was 22 because COVID.
Yeah.
And basically, my first month of playing, well, I guess my first live tournaments I ever played were the 2021 WSOP. At that point, it was that was the Rio one, the last one at the Rio, and it was in October. And so I had like school during that, I was still in school, and so I couldn't really stay in Vegas and grind out a full schedule. But I made a few trips, played a few tournaments, had a couple small cashes. That was like my first introduction to live tournaments. And then the following year, I was done with school, 2022. So like February, March, I started playing full time live tournaments for that year, and then my first month, I just kind of sun ran live, and I chopped a 2200 six max with Chance Cornuth, who was the GPI #1 at the time, which is pretty cool. For only like 20K, it was a relatively small field. But then
That was the LAPC, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that was like the first one I won, or the first one I chopped, and then after that, like a couple weeks later, I won the circuit main for like 160K, with all of myself too, because which was nice. Yeah, that's like a really good bankroll builder. So after that, I started playing a bit more live. I basically played live throughout the whole WSOP. Had a couple scores there. I wasn't the best series, but it wasn't the worst either. I actually got crushed live during that, but I did really well in the online bracelet events.
Right.
I final tabled both of the 5300s during the series and got 7th and 3rd. So yeah, it ended up being okay. Wasn't really playing high rollers at that point, so I ended up winning very small on the series. And then after that, I played a little bit live, but really since the 2022 WSOP ended, I've just been focused on playing online, and like my goal is to break into high rollers and be like one of those regs. who's the Ben Heath, Daniel Dvoress, Tim Adams types, regs who's playing all the stuff. But I sort of briefly jumped into some high rollers a little bit prematurely, I would say, and I kind of got punched in the face a little bit, so it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that these guys are truly the best in the world, and there's a reason that you see the same guys at the FTs over and over. So that sort of inspired me to, being pretty young at the time, 22. I was like, okay, I've got plenty of time, but I really want to do this the right way. I don't want to be one of those guys like blasting in high stakes and busting the roll and doing things the wrong way. So after I sort of got, shot took a bit, got punched in the face a bit, I was like, all right, I rented a place in Montreal. I was like, I'm just going to play online, study a shit ton. I called it the cave. Like, I'm going to lock myself in the cave, and I'm going to eventually emerge out of the cave and come back to live. So basically, I haven't played live in quite some time. I did the PCA trip, where actually it was not the worst trip, even though nothing came up on my Hendon mob, because I sattied into the 10K main and bricked it, so I didn't really lose much there. And then the 25K PSPC, I pulled the platinum pass out of the the 3K mystery bounty, but that doesn't show up on Hendon. So I ended up
so it was
cashing.
a profitable trip then,
That wasn't profitable, but it really wasn't that bad. It was a lot of fun. I will say it was a lot of fun. I mean, I lost really small on the trip, but yeah, it's unfortunate to not have the Bahamas flag on my Hendon mob. But so basically I played that live. But since September, I want to say that's like I played the WPT World Championship in December. So I've basically only played like, I don't know, a handful of live tournaments since the WSOP ended last year. And so my plan is to come back to the WSOP this year, grind that full schedule, see how we do.
Cool.
And 2024 is kind of the goal of like, okay, get back to being a full-time live player, hopefully be playing Tritons and stuff. And yeah, so that's my long-winded story. So
there's a lot to unpick, really.
Sure.
I'll try and start from the beginning and work my way through. So you started and you got cracked, which is like, I think, a reality for a lot of, especially young guys who start.
Yeah.
What did you sense a moment where you made a breakthrough where you're like, oh, hang on, I'm actually like grinding a profit now, I'm winning? And then was there like some sort of like mental framework that you changed in terms of your like approach?
So I guess it's tougher to measure because I was playing online MTTs and live cash, so I wasn't playing online cash. And when you're playing online cash, it's a lot easier to gauge your win rate. You can trust the big blinds per 100 stats in your database a lot more. Obviously, there's a lot less variance in cash than in tournaments overall. So it was sort of tough to measure, and I kind of had to go off of how I was feeling and basically, was I feeling oppressed at the tables? Like, was I feeling like my opponents were oppressing me? Like, was I like, or really, did I feel comfortable? Was I more in control? Did I understand the spots that they were putting me in? Did I understand, how the hands were going? And I guess there became a point where I kind of felt like I had a better grasp on them. I mean, in hindsight, I still didn't have much of a grasp on them, but but just getting some fundamentals down. And I mean, when I was playing these online MTTs, I would deposit like $500 or something, and I mean, these would be like, the ABI was under $20, so I didn't have to be like some crazy PO solver mad genius to be beating these games. After a certain point, like my introduction to studying poker was first reading a few books, like Dara O'Kearney's books were really good. And Jonathan Little, like his YouTube videos for free and stuff, and like Bart Hansen for live cash stuff, and it's just the most sort of like it's basic content, but it's good, and it's tailored towards sort of beginners or beating low to mid stakes. And there's very little theoretical stuff in there, but there are concepts that are solid, and that do translate well to the tables.
Great. So you felt that kind of turn a corner for yourself. You started to win. Was it up to 5-10? You said you were kind of like.
Yeah, I had a couple scores where I had like a 7K score online. And then I had, a few, I don't remember exactly actually, but a few scores, like a handful of scores between like 3 and 8,000, let's say, to the point where I had like 20 to 25K to my name. And obviously, if we're talking about being properly rolled for games, I'm still not properly rolled for 510, but I was playing.
Right. Okay.
So,
Why not?
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I remember the first time I played 510. Funny story. I ran like ace king into aces, all in pre for like 100 bigs effective, um, in a 510. But the 20 was on, the straddle was on, so it was 510-20,
Yeah.
and I lost like legitimately 60% of my net worth like in one hand.
Oh god.
Like all in pre with like ace king and aces, and I remember just like sitting at the table and people like expecting me to reload. And I was like, I can't. Like, I can't.
Oh my god.
That was fun. I mean, that was so painful, but yeah, I mean, it's funny
Yeah.
to look back on it.
Growth pains, right? Growth pains.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So it's quite interesting when you say that. Like, I think I've not really heard many people that have done what you've done in terms of like they've been successful in MTTs, they've fired online MTTs, and then live cash. I don't know if you dabbled in online cash at all, or you kind of stay away
Yeah, a
from
little
it.
bit. I did a 510 bankroll challenge on ACR
Right.
last year. I did.
How'd that go?
Well, I mean, I actually ran really good. I won so full disclosure, I didn't play enough hands. I ended up playing about like 40,000 hands or so.
Right.
It's not, you probably want more hands than that to get a really, really good idea of your win rate or a really, really good idea of, like a sample. But I did run pretty good. I ran above EV and I won at like 11 big blinds per 100,
Okay.
which was like, I mean, that's not sustainable, and I don't actually have that win rate.
Yeah.
But it went okay, yeah. And I remember I just got into an argument with a friend about how like, oh, online cash is unbeatable, and there's so many bots and there's RTA and stuff, and it's just you kind of hear the same things over and over. And I was like, no, it's not, dude. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
have you seen what Jeremiah Williams is doing now?
Yeah, it's amazing, right? 50K to I think he's almost there, right? 200K.
He got to literally 199K like last week, and he sort of downswung right at the end. But yeah, I mean, he's obviously going to get there, and what he's doing is the same thing. His intention was sort of the same as mine, to just show people like these regs aren't that good, and the games are beatable still. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it really is. But I would say at that point in time, 2022, I'd studied a lot of cash at that point because I was playing as I grew my bankroll. So basically, MTTs got me off the very ground, like got me off of zero to start growing the roll.
Yeah.
And then playing live cash in LA and some semi-private games too that ended up getting a little big. Those sort of got me to a point where I could start playing bigger stakes responsibly, I would say.
Gotcha.
So because of that, and because all of the money was in live cash, I spent the majority of my time playing live cash and studying live cash, and MTTs were kind of like my passion. And I was playing significantly lower stakes MTTs and not having the best results, but just sort of like, I wasn't studying much ICM at the time because, when I was going to study, I was going to study the things that were going to lead to my, biggest earn, I guess. So I think that's a big part of, when I switched over to tournaments full time, there were definitely some leaks like that were pretty typical of guys who come over from cash. I mean, there are some guys who play who are way better at cash than I ever was. The guys who play like the highest stakes cash online, Linus or Barack Wisbrod or like these types of guys. And sometimes you'll see them like some pretty significant ICM mistakes, especially at the beginning, when they first sort of start playing tournaments. But like they're incredible poker players, and obviously like with a bit of study, they figure it out rather quickly.
Yeah.
But so, not comparing myself to them, I think those guys are probably a lot smarter than I am. But it's the same idea of how coming from a cash background, you're going to make certain kinds of mistakes that are typical.
And so, have you just had a natural inclination towards tournaments? Because I think if I was thinking about myself personally and some people I know, the dream is the LA private games, the LA cash scene.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, you kind of
I wasn't like in the LA private games to the point. So I hadn't played more than 6 sessions at any one private game before I got kicked out. So to me, what it was being sick of the politics of everything. And before poker, I dabbled in like as a freshman, sophomore in college, alongside poker, I was playing esports competitively and stuff. And
Right.
before that, like, I was a tennis player. Like, I was, and stuff. And I played chess growing up. So I've always liked games and I've always liked competition. And I've always like had a little bit of a mentally ill obsession with winning. So to me, the whole idea of like, okay, obviously, playing LA private games are going to be much more profitable than playing
The comments or
Triton.
somewhere. Oh, Triton. Okay.
No, I was going to say comparing it to playing
Right.
like high
Okay.
stakes tournaments, like
Yeah.
when you play something like Triton, I mean, in most of those fields, like, the available win rate's rather small, and sure there are recreationals, but the structures are fast, and it's a lot of variance, and you can go on I mean, I don't want to name it. There's certain guys who I consider to be the best players in the world, like genuinely the top 5 players in the world, who just I was talking to one. I don't really want to say who it is because it's kind of don't expose people, but I was talking to this guy, and he's one of the guys that you see at Triton, and one of the guys that everyone knows who follows tournaments, and we were coming back from the Bahamas, and we were at the airport together, and I was like, "Oh, how's your trip?" Blah blah blah, and he was like, whatever, it was 5 million downswing." So like,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, I mean, it's just like over the last couple of months, he downswung like $5 million, and it's just who would put themselves through that. But to me, having to suck up to people to get into games and pretend like the disingenuity.
Disingenuity. Yeah.
Disingenuity. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So the disingenuity of like having to pretend to be everyone's friend and to suck up to people because you're the winning player in the game, and pretend to be drinking or actually like have to be doing shots when you don't want to stay in the game and stuff like this. Like the politicking of everything. And I've got nothing against doing shots, but when I'm playing poker and I really want to be ripping
I'm the
shots,
same, honestly, in that way. I like the idea of having to be that guy, but I think in some ways I kind of resonate with what you're saying in the sense that I'm there to win, and if I see a shot as like negative EV for me, and like
for sure.
I can't get over
that. I think if I have 2 shots, I think I'll be fine. 2, 3 maybe. But once I start hammering them, there's no chance I'm gonna be that perceptive, or. And I think that playing private games and games like those types of private high stakes cash games with a lot of recreationals, I think your win rate comes from attention to detail. It's all about like being zoned in. There could be a really soft lineup, but you have, in order to maximize your win rate, you have to figure out like, okay, these guys are bad, but how are they bad? Like, what are they doing that's bad?
Yeah.
And you can't just say, oh, this guy is bad, and go in and I mean, you can probably win, but you're not going to win the most, or as much as you could.
Yeah, and it's like a different kind of game, right? It's almost like it's like a different kind of game to like what you'd normally play in like a tournament or something. Because like in a tournament, it doesn't matter if it's like Seth Davies or Cy Early even or Chris Brewer. It doesn't really matter who that person is. Like you're still playing like fundamentally, you're following a baseline, right? Of like how you should approach a spot.
Yeah, I mean, they're still deviating. I'd push back a little bit and say that we do, at high stakes, there is probably more deviating against other high stakes regs than people would think. But that's just a little bit of a side note. But for the most part, what you're saying is true. Like against most regs, to make a significant deviation, I would say, like a significant deviation, you have to have a pretty high confidence interval in a certain read or a certain input, right?
Yeah.
And most guys are going to play balanced enough that you can't make crazy, insane deviations. And they're also self-aware enough that if you start making these deviations, they'll adjust. And then it becomes like this, you adjust, they adjust back, you adjust, they adjust. And then what happens? That's actually how a solver works, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what a solver is doing to reach a theoretical equilibrium.
Yeah, right? I don't know if you've seen it. There's a great Finding Equilibrium video of where like Adamo, he had I think he's had like a bad few months, like a bad year.
Yeah.
It might have been his 2022, but the video just basically details how like he was playing in a way where these guys are just adapted to it. He's playing hyper aggressive,
for sure,
put premium spots, and then like you said,
and I think it's no secret. Like I actually posted on Twitter like last week. Because I'm doing the commentary for Super Millions.
Saw that.
And no, like again, like
I'm doing it again, right?
I'm doing it like on Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So a little plug. Tune in to.
Tune in. Yeah, we'll press the link in the description.
Yeah, exactly. But no, because when I'm doing a commentary for something like that, I'm kind of wondering, like, is it unethical to be revealing like my personal reads on these types of players? Like, oh, I think this guy's, because it's good commentary to say like, you see a guy show up with an out of line hand in a 3-bet or a 4-bet, and without context, it can just look terrible, And like, but there are times, and I don't feel like this is unethical to say with Adamo because it's just so widely known. Adamo knows it, everyone else knows it, that he's so out of line aggressive in certain spots that like people will just take like queen 6 suited and pure 4-bet it, and like, and his strategy, it's one of those strategies that when people aren't finding the proper adjustments against you, it prints, and it's super difficult to oh shit, are we frozen here?
No, I can see you all good.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, it froze on my screen for a bit, but
yeah,
seems
I think it's just because it's like uploading your like stuff.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, sorry. So, like I was saying, when people start adjusting back against that, it becomes a very precarious situation. So,
do you think a big part of it as well is like, I mean, you talked about your like experience in like esports and tennis. Is that like a big part of you that's probably not even money driven, but you just want to have that kind
100%.
of a law?
I was 100%. I mean, to me, I'm not the most overly materialistic person. I mean, I'd like to have a nice house. I'd probably like to drive a nice car. And that's about it. I mean, like to go to dinner and be able to not worry about how much the bill is and stuff. But just like beyond having like the basic financial freedom, I'm not someone who's like obsessed with, like necessarily wearing all the nicest clothes or I spend very little money actually. Like, so to me, as long as I can live comfortably and stuff like that, I don't really care too much.
I think it's super interesting because you don't really ever see people that are doing what you've done. And the only person that comes to mind for me is like probably Chris Brewer.
Yeah,
that's sure. The only person who was like playing the bike, maybe like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and then you just see him pop up with Triton, and then he's just like one of the regs there now. Because like it's just like because for people in Europe, you don't really see people in America come over to like our online events, which is like Stars, right? Like Scoop. Like, I'll be flying Scoop and some other events, and like you don't really see people who've like left what we think of America as the Holy Grail. Like that's the promised land. Yeah. Playing like the Vegas cash games, playing in LA cash games, that's where the money is. And then like what we're doing is like stupid, battling against like really good players and like slow stakes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I just think the journey you're on is like really interesting and unique. For sure.
Yeah, and at times, going through, I mean, everyone, especially when I'm playing online and I'm playing, like between 500 and 1K ABI online, and you go through a downswing in tournaments against, I'm sitting at basically a Triton table, but it's online in a $600 tournament, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I doing this? But then I do have a vision and I trust the process, and I believe that like, I mean, the experience and the rate of improvement that you sort of achieve by playing these tournaments is so massive, and to be able to, I mean, I genuinely believe that like a Stars 1K is tougher than the WSOP 25K. And like just a normal Stars 1K, like a small, like on a Thursday or on a Friday, or like a small field one, right? And so I'm sort of, I don't know. I mean, you're English, so I mean, I'm not sure that you're a huge baseball fan, but
I'm aware of baseball. Yeah.
Okay, so you know how like when they're warming up, the hitters are warming up to hit, they swing the bat with a donut on.
Right, I didn't know that. No.
So there's this thing called a donut, and you put it around the bat, like you slide it onto the bat, and it adds weight, and it adds, I don't know, some amount of pounds on it, kilos. And and the idea is you're swinging a heavier bat, and so that way once you actually go up to hit, you take the donut off, and now the bat feels lighter, and your bat speed is better, and it feels a lot smoother to swing. So that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing with playing on Stars right now. Is once I come back to playing live, I feel like I'm going to be playing in softer fields for higher stakes, and that's 100%. kind of the dream.
Yeah, it's like when obviously for people in like Europe and the UK and stuff, we look at like 2-5 Zoom. It's probably like one of the toughest cash games in the world.
Sure.
And that's just like crazy, right? When you think it's like a $2-5 game. And then one of my last guests, which I think you'll probably like the podcast, but we talked about some of these topics and it was really interesting. It was like Ginge Poker. I don't know where you are from. And he's been through the whole live circuit. He's been through the online cash circuit. And we just talked about like what's the ideal way to make money in this kind of like dynamic. And he kind of mentioned what you said, like online cash is great, and I think to be a winning poker player, you should be winning on there. If you're not
Yeah.
winning on online cash and winning live, there's like a real issue with your like
Yeah.
fundamental game.
Yeah.
But he said this like the best way to do it is to play on these online games, like you said, with the donut and keep sharp, keep warm, practice, get better, and then take that learnings, take your like ability from there, try and play in the best cash games possible.
Sure. Yeah, and I think the same applies to tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Be playing like a 500 or playing on Stars or on GG, playing the 1K and playing against really, really tough players, applying all that you've studied, thinking about each spot with ICM, like how does the various, structures affect ICM, at final tables. It's cool because, on different sites and especially compared to live, like the payout structures look very different from each other. And like the Monday 1Ks on GG, typically the way the payouts would look is it's something like, 13% of the field cashes, and then between the first person to min cash and 10th place, there's almost no jumps. And then from 10th to 9th, you'll see it go from like, let's say 2.7K to 5.2K. And then the jumps get smaller again from 9th to 8th. And then it's a little bit top heavy at first. So it creates this like puzzle of where it's of oscillating ICM implications, right? And it's really, I think it's really helpful to me to be able to like go into HRC, for example, and run the same spot 3 times with 3 different payout structures. And just sort of then you get a feel for, I'm playing a Florida tournament where, third place is 180K, second place is 260K, and first place is 510, and it's like, okay, just win the tournament, and you can actually tangibly see the effects to which, you say, fuck ICM or whatever. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think what Ginge is saying is completely spot on.
Over. And I guess my last guest, which the podcast probably will be out next week, and I guess yours actually might follow that. But we just had Ryan Feldman on yesterday, and we talked about Hustler and all the. Obviously, we had a lot to get into because it's been crazy with all these Twitter spaces and there's been a lot of drama. Yeah, we had to keep pushing it back, and every time we pushed it back, there's like more questions I had for him and then more. But we spoke about like one of the like my pet peeves, and it's something I spoke to Ginge with. I guess like telling you the story. So Ginge did a series where he was going to go to America and win $1 million. He was going to go to Vegas and then he was going to play some of these streams. And he went to LA and he just couldn't get in the games. Like Ryan was just like,
right, no way.
I think he played in Vegas with a guy called Beans. Darren.
Yeah.
So he played in this high stakes like Vegas private game and. It was just be an action player. And this Beans guy said, well, we'll get you. I'll talk to Ryan. We'll get you in the game. So Ginge's like, can you do it here now while I'm here? So he got the phone number, said, hey, Ryan. He's like, Ginge Poker's here with me. Can we get him on the stream? And just like, Ryan's like, he's a super pro, no way.
Yeah.
And it's just like kind of sad. And so then I think what Ginge ended up doing was he went to the lodge and he still dusted it off. He was an action player, right? He's like a fun guy. He's quite like,
I met him at, I met him at the GG party last summer, in Vegas. We were both exceedingly drunk and ended up arm wrestling on the table. So yeah, I do know Ginge a little bit. Yeah. Oh no, sorry. I met him for the no, wait. I met him for the first time at that party, and the time when we arm wrestled, it was we were playing 25-50 cash, or was it 25-50 cash at Resorts World, and then we arm wrestled. He wanted to sit down, and I said, if you want a seat at this game, you have to beat me in arm wrestling or something, something like that. So
nice.
So yeah,
that's one way.
That's a good way to gatekeep the games. But he ended up playing. I mean, that game was for fun. Rampage was there, and he got that game started. And
yeah. So it's quite like I don't know if you watched him on the lodge as well when I think just when Doug just took over and he was like trying to build the stream up.
Yeah,
but he was giving action, and so I was kind of just confused because in my perspective, if you've got a guy who's got a following, and like. He's not going to be he's not going to sit there just like headphones on, hood up. I'll just try and get him in the game and see what happens. I think it adds to the dynamic.
100%, yeah. This is something I think. I mean, Ryan obviously would know a lot more about running a game and putting together a lineup than I would, but I think game runners in general, maybe underestimate the extent to which the population or like the viewers want to see a guy like Linus. In the lineups, like how cool it is for a viewer to see, like, in any sport or any game, for soccer, football, it's like Messi, Ronaldo. I mean, these guys are like levitating above the rest of the players because they have this allure of just being the best. In baseball, it's like Shohei Ohtani, like the guy can hit and pitch, and like the media is all over him, and the fans are all over him, and he can. I mean, it's every sport has one, right? Every game, Faker in League of Legends, right? So
it's like Live at the Bite. I think their best stream to date is when they got Limitless on. I think it was like maybe a couple months ago.
I watched that one.
Yeah, it was a great stream. And he was crazy, right?
He's great. Oh, yeah. I mean, and people don't understand because there's also this assumption that if you're like one of the online guys and you're European or even like someone like me, who I've sort of become an honorary Euro, right, as far as the Americans are concerned, because I moved to Canada to play online with Euros. But
traitor.
I'm a traitor. But people assume that like these types of people have no personality, and they're going to show up at the games and have their headphones on and be totally bad for the game and stuff. And I think for a couple of guys that's of course going to be true, but it's going to be true for Americans as well. And for lots of people, I mean, like Limitless is out of his mind, like on and off the table. You know what I mean? And he's so good for the game. I mean,
that's a great point. And I was like, I don't think have you ever come close to playing on Hustler? Like, because obviously Rampage has been on.
I played post stream a couple times. Okay. I didn't end up ever playing on the stream. I talked with Ryan at one point about getting on the stream, and it ended up just not happening. Like, we kind of just didn't. I wasn't super like pushing for it either.
Right.
But it ended up just not happening. But so no, I guess.
Right, okay. Nice. But, okay. Post stream games, but
post stream I did play a couple times.
Yeah, it's just weird because obviously, I mean, I've got a lot of respect for Ryan. I think he's like the goat of like building these games up, and we were just talking about like that premise of like, what is the process of a good player trying to get in these games? What do you have to do? And I mean, two great people that I look at who's got into the good games just through that kind of personality aspect is your guy Rampage and Mariano.
Yeah,
and Mariano hopefully should be the next guest after you. Touch wood, that should happen. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just quite an interesting dynamic of like, all right, so you're winning. You've the poker dream is to remove the stakes and be a winning player. But then, how do you get into these games if you're just like, everyone can't be losing, right? That's the gist of it. There has to be a winner.
Yeah.
And I mean, you spoke about it having to like change, be good for the game, the dynamics, do the shots, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I'm not like it's not that I'm I don't like put up a fight, sort of like. To sort of stay in private games in LA, I would just do the shots, and I would just I would just and I think I do have sort of a bigger personality than most people, like especially poker players at the table specifically. Like I do talk a lot at the table, and there was a couple games where there was one game that I ended up staying in for the longest time of all the games, which is not very long, but the most success I had staying in a game was this one game where it was 25-50 and the 100 was on like I would say half the time. Right. So basically like an average like big blind size or straddle size was like 75, right? So it was a relatively big game, and I was playing with all of myself, and like it was all recreationals. The guy who ran the game was so the guy who ran the game played in the game every time, and he basically like there was basically no rake. There was no rake. Everything was above board, and it was like the dream spot. It was also held at a public casino, so it was a private game held at a public casino. So you don't have to worry about like the game getting robbed or some crazy shit happening. And there are some crazy private game stories I have from LA too. But
we'll get into these after this point. Yeah, let's hear a few.
Okay, sure. But yeah, so I mean that was like the best deal ever. But and the recreationals in the game loved me. I mean, I was the only person who I hurt in the game was the game runner himself, because he was playing in the game and I was stealing EV from him, and I was aware of that, and I was like, listen, man, if you want, like, you can buy 25% of my action if you want. Like, I don't view it as unethical because it wouldn't have affected anything on the table. For me, like, it wouldn't. I wouldn't have changed the way I was playing. I don't think he would have really changed the way he was playing. I was like, whatever I got to do to stay in this game. Like the guy, like there were times when, like, the game would run and I wouldn't get a seat on that day, And because there was enough recreationals, and certain recreationals were like, "Oh, where's Mike? Like, we want him here." Even though, because they're not there to win money, they
So what were
don't
you doing?
care.
What were you doing to get on the good side so much?
I was just talking to them like humans. Like I wasn't doing anything. I think I was actually just being authentic.
Right, okay.
And because there was no angle. Like, I'm not here. I wasn't trying to suck up to them overly. I wasn't being a dick, obviously. I was just being sort of myself. And there were a couple of guys who, like, completely, like, outside of poker, I thought were very interesting people. And so,
Right.
like, they would talk and I would listen, but I wasn't listening to butter them up. I actually was genuinely curious about, like, their life story and how they got, as success, because the recreationals in these types of games who can afford to play these stakes are, like, successful businessmen, and, like, they have a lot of stories and they have a lot of wisdom to impart, right? Even though they might not be the most polished on the table. So I don't know. I think it just evolved naturally to where a couple of guys specifically really, really liked me in that game.
Yeah.
And the guy who ran the game ended up telling me, like, no, it's really bad. It's bad luck if we swap or anything, or I buy you. And I kind of get that. And eventually he just stopped inviting me to the game. And I was like, shit. Because I was making like over $1,000 an hour in that game.
Right. Oh my god.
Yeah. So like,
juicy.
it was great.
Yeah.
But it just became really tough to sort of stay in a game. And then, there were certain games where, like, you go in and, like, once I sort of had some tournament results, and I did, like, Solve for Why podcast, and sort of had any sort of public following, I guess. I mean, it becomes impossible for me to get into games at that point, right? Because now yeah, the veil is lifted, and you can't pretend to be insert job crypto trader. So
do you think there's a bit of an allure though? Like, people see you on, like, some of these streams or whatever. Obviously, like, see on Rampage and stuff, and they're just like, "Oh, I want to pro that guy. He seems fun." Do you not think that maybe that's some of that publicity?
I think possibly for recreationals, especially the ones who don't care as much about their win rate.
Right.
Sure, but I don't think the game runners see it that way. And so that's kind of all that matters, right? The guys who are making
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. This is, like, it's still something I know, but you're probably much better versed on it. So when I was talking to Ryan about the pros trying to play the game, what happened with Garrett, why Ginge couldn't get in, etc. And I think they spoke about it in the spaces, but the players just didn't want them in the game. Anymore. Like the Rex, like Blanchett Ben, he didn't want Garrett in the game flat out.
Yeah.
I think some of the other players probably
didn't. Sorry, go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off.
It's just like more like, is a wreck still a wreck if they're just, like, so focused on their, like, win rate or in the game?
That's a great question. I guess the technical definition of a wreck is someone who doesn't play poker for their income, right? Like someone who doesn't rely on their income or win rate at the table to pay their bills. But with that said, I mean, I don't want to paint it to be like, this was just what I was saying about that last game where the Rex liked me. That was one specific lineup in one specific game. It's not like everywhere I go, the Rex are like, yes, let's bring him here. But I do think, like Mariano, I think, is a great example of a winning player who Rex like a lot. Yeah. And I'm not super close friends with him, but obviously he's tight with Rampage, and so I've met him and hung out with him a few times. But I think he handles his business the right way, and I think he does a good job of having Rex invite him back. And I think there is, I mean, I've played with Garrett a couple times in LA, because by the time, like, I sort of, I'll put it this way. Like, it is rather intimidating to play with Garrett, because of the fact that that the money means a lot more to you than it does to him. And he's sitting there 4x covering everyone at the table. And, yeah, it's.
Do you not prefer playing against somebody like him, though? Maybe he's, like, still driving action, right? And maybe some of these regs that just, like.
Depends how rich you are at the time.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've played against him. Like, I haven't played much with Garrett. I think I've only played because I haven't really played the stream games, right? And he after a certain point he played, like, only the stream games. But
so were these games like the Commerce or Bike or?
The one I'm talking about is at the Bike.
Okay.
Yeah, I played a bit of, like, 1020 at the Commerce. That game was a lot, like, that was a fully public game, so there was no gatekeeping to that game. So it ended up just being like an online cash game. with a couple Armenian guys in the mix.
Right.
Because I don't know, for some reason Armenians, they're just all over poker and LA and stuff, which is great. I don't know. I don't mean to bring like a nationality into this, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So the public, so the Commerce game was fully public, and I haven't been to the Commerce. I went once. Funny story. I went back to the Commerce because I had an account, basically like a bank account, right, at the Commerce where I just kept my money.
Yeah.
And once I switched over to online tournaments and I left LA, I totally forgot to just like take the money. So I had like a pretty good chunk of money just sitting in this account that I totally forgot about. And so I went back. I was like, oh, should I gotta go back to LA? And this is in October, so I went back to LA with the purpose of like I need to just get this money. And while I was there at the Commerce to pick up the money, they were running 10-20, so 10-20-40. So I ended up sitting in the game, and again, October 2022. So this isn't that long ago, like 6 months ago, let's say.
Yeah.
And the game was like reasonably good. I mean, there were some Euros in the game, but I mean, there were some recreationals as well. And compared to what you would see online, I mean, the game was pretty good, and it definitely had substantial win rate available. And I would say that a lot of the regs in the game were also not very good because, again, if you're playing live cash in LA and you're bum hunting I mean, it's kind of a harsh term, but it is what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the most polished, you know?
Right.
And what ends up happening is if their win rate is coming from all the recreationals, if you're super pro, you can generate a pretty significant win rate against the regs in the game, you know? And I think that's what people sort of underestimate, because I remember for a while I would think like, okay, I mean, I would think this about like poker. I remember asking Dan Smith when I was 21, before anyone knew who I was, before I had started playing high stakes tournaments or any like live tournaments. I remember I asked him, why do you play 10Ks? I was like,
fair question.
Yeah, I was like, why do you play like these poker goes where it's like everyone is breaking even against each other? Because in my head, that's what it looked like. Like everyone's breaking even against each other, and you're trying to just like see who runs the best or whatever. And maybe there's a couple recreationals, and that's sort of what my perception was of like the poker go fields. But as I sort of got older and more experienced and more studied and more aware of how regs are making mistakes, I kind of was sorry. Dan's answer to that question was because I think I have a win rate over everyone in the field, for lack of a better, including not everyone, but you know, he thinks he's one of the better regs in the field, and so which is obviously everyone thinks that, right? Like that's why they're all there. But it's totally true though. Like in cash, I used to think as well. Okay, there's 8 players at this table. There's 4 recs and 4 regs. Hopefully, I'll break even against the regs, and you know, we'll funnel some money.
Having confidence in your own game, right? I guess, and like something to back that up with it as well.
For sure. And I think like doing the ACR bankroll challenge, like I talked about, was a pretty significant confidence booster in terms of my cash ability, because you know, I did play. At some point online, I started playing a good amount. Like I played some live cash online cash on WSOP, where Jeremiah was playing a bit, and I played on ACR a little bit, and so I did have some experience in cash online, and I did a good bit of solver work on 100 big blind cash,
right?
And so just being able to apply like a lot of these concepts and to live, I mean, it gave me a lot of confidence to say like, okay, there's a 10-20 game, 10-20-40 game running at the Commerce, and there's 7 regs and 2 recreationals. I'm going to sit in that game every time.
Yeah.
Because I feel confident that I'm going to be one of the better regs at the table. And so, I think that confidence really has a dramatic impact on how you play at the table, and trusting yourself, trusting your decision-making process is huge.
It's like a big mental game thing that people probably don't think about, right? It's like having that confidence in your own ability. And
I've always tried to be, so imagine I'm this good at poker. I've always tried to think that I'm this good on the table and this good off the table, right? So overconfident on the table and underconfident off the table. So I think that's kind of the way I've approached it, to be like, you know, I could be sitting at a table with I don't know, Makita, right? And I'm like, I'm gonna crush this guy, and he's just better than me. He's just better than me. Like, but at the table, I have to think I'm the best, you know, like in order and trust my decision making process. And then off the table, I could be like, okay, yeah, Makita's better than me. Like, let's see what he's actually doing and try to incorporate some of that into my own game. See if he's so.
That's the way you're gonna find out, right? And I really respect that kind of like concept of like, wanting to battle with the best, and
Yeah,
so then we're gonna find out, right? To be the best, you got to beat the best. So
yeah,
it's very cool, man. So I guess like coming up for you, so you've just come back, well, recently, I guess, well, quite a while. You come up from the PCA, finished that,
sure.
and then you didn't go to Monte Carlo. You didn't fancy EPT.
Didn't play any EPTs. Yeah, I didn't go to Monte Carlo. I didn't go to Paris. I didn't go to there's one other one, right? Monte Carlo,
Barcelona,
Paris.
I think.
Yeah, Barcelona.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Barcelona either. So basically, like next year is my target on when I'm going to go to those. I'm still in the cave right now.
Still in the cave.
I'm doing a lot of prep work for Scoop and for WSOP. I didn't even go to Florida, which is one that like you never miss, like in the States.
The WPT one.
Yeah, they have like they had a 3,500 main that was over $1 million for first. They had a 25K that Thomas Boyven won, and they had a couple 10Ks that were like pretty good. Like, to be honest, I should have gone to that one, but I should have gone to that one. But I was really committed to the idea of like not FOMOing, like not so obviously with what we talked about, me wanting to battle against the best and stuff, there's a line after which it becomes irresponsible. For example, own diming super millions every week just for shits. Like it, so I have to sort of keep it in check of like not wanting to ego battle, not like wanting to play responsibly, wanting to play within my means, both financially and skill wise. Like for example, if I'm regging like a 25K on GG that has 8 runners, that's not a good idea, right? So I shouldn't do that, And when I play Super Millions, I should probably not have all of myself. So for me, I was really conscious because there was a point in time when I was really like rich at the time for myself. Like I had the most money I'd had, and it felt like making money was super easy. And I was sort of my relationship with money was a little bit warped in the sense that, like I said, I don't spend much money anyway, so I didn't really care. Like I'm just like Super Million, like 10,000 buy-in, like I just click it, and then I bust, just click rebuy. Like and it's not good. and so I did get hurt a little bit in like that's when I say like jumping in high stakes and getting punched in the face. Like that was.
I think I remember seeing you actually. This is a funny memory now. It's coming back to me. I think it was during the last online. I think there's some online bracelets, right? Last series. It was the last series, I think.
During the summer.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did you fire some online? I think it might have been on Rampage stream, but you guys fired like a 7K.
Yeah.
I've never seen somebody sweat a bubble. I think you and Rampage, like, you guys were sweating that bubble hard.
I bubbled it.
Oh, you bubbled it, man. No,
I bubbled it to Mateos.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
With all of myself.
Yeah. The way you were like, I think it was like pre-bubble, there was like 3 or 4 people to go. Because at this time, it was going on all night, but I couldn't stop watching it. And I had work in the morning. And I was like, man, this is crazy. This guy is like, I could tell you annoy yourself, but like, this guy's firing this like.
Oh, yeah. I was firing. I remember I played a Sadie into it. And I was like, all right, I'll play a Sadie and win the Sadie, hopefully, and then get in that way. And then I didn't win the Sadie. I'm like, well, I'm still going to play. Like, I'm not going to not play. So that was like, that's great timing in terms of like when I was feeling peak rich, like when I was firing a little bit too hard. And again, it was irresponsible, but it wasn't. I sort of like got it in check before it became like problematic seriously and like became like actually suicidal to be like it was never like a real sweat where I was like, oh, I need to win this.
You need to cash this.
Yeah, like I always had more than enough to like live and pay rent and everything. But I definitely was I was going hard. You've
come a long way since then.
Yeah, and so now I mean it's been a little bit of overcorrecting where I think I'm a little bit nitty now to fire sometimes. Because I know I remember I was talking with a couple of guys and I reached a certain dollar amount net worth, and then it became like, okay, I have a reasonable amount of money here, but sort of I'm 22 years old at the time, and it's like, okay, I guess the idea is if I lose half my net worth, I'm actually still okay. I'm still in the top like 1% for my age bracket. Like I'm still in a really good spot. But if I shot take super hard and it goes well, then I'm just Fedor. So so let's just try to be Fedor, and then it didn't work out. But yeah, but now, like I said, so part of the whole cave process for me is not FOMO firing stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like FOMOing Florida, FOMOing Monte Carlo. And I think there are, like with Florida specifically, it's like legitimate reasons why I actually should be playing.
It sounds too juicy. I'm surprised you missed that one when you're telling me like all about.
Yeah, no, I mean, because I think honestly it was just an exercise in discipline.
Okay.
Like, I think, and just showing myself like, listen, we have a process, we have a game plan, we're gonna stick with it. And I'm 23 years old right now, and there are going to be so many Florida trips in front of me. There are going to be so many high rollers to play, so many WPT mains, so many of everything that really missing one at the age of 23 is not a big deal. And I think it was good to just to miss it for my mental, I don't want to say mental health, but you know what I'm saying, like for my point of view of
you
sort
feel
of
better
like,
about yourself, right? Maybe even self-esteem, like the fact that you did something that you want. It's like dopamine restriction, right? Like you wanted to do something.
It's like cold showers or
cold
something.
Shower,
right?
exactly.
Exactly. So like
cool.
me not going to Florida was my cold shower.
You made some really good points as well about like this idea of like even just being like, you don't always have to reg that event. You can look at like the field and the lobby and see who's in and make that decision. A good example is the WPT's coming to Nottingham just till dawn for some of my mates here and myself. And there's a big event that I usually play like a $560, like what $800 or whatever. And I'll be like, normally won't fly that high, but then my friend said, look, they're giving away 40 seats in this like like small tournament. They're giving away seats all the time. Like, oh, here's a seat to the 560 for like signing up for the newsletter, right?
Yeah.
You're insane to not fire that field. And it's like, that's a great point. And like, I like that aspect of like having that discipline, that analysis of thinking, what's this field like? What's this spot? Do I go for it?
Yeah. For sure, man. And so I think going forward, my plan is to really, really just, I think that I've satisfied my appetite of wanting to battle with the best by virtue of switching to MTTs. Like that's already enough. Like I'm already in this space. I'm already going to be playing with the best. I don't need to now overextend myself and be like, I need to play with the best of the best of the best and reg the 25K on GG, or I need to go and play like the 100K at PCA. It's just chill out, like just
lots of time ahead of you, right?
We got lots of time. Don't need to rush things. The way I view myself right now is like in any sport, like there's like a younger kid who has some potential that potential needs to be developed, right? And a lot of time, I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but you don't want to rush like a young kid up into the big leagues too fast, right? And because bad things can happen when he's not ready. You stunt his development because he's now it's getting hammered at the top league, and so
it can't hurt, right? It can't hurt spending that extra time in the cave.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, like the process I've gone about here. I mean, I'm studying consistently with certain people that are some of the top regs in the world, and we're reviewing every GG 10K, Stars 5K, Titans final table. We're just using tons of software and doing lots of stuff that is lots of node locking too, to focus on like how to play a really exploitative style of poker, which is going to aid me hopefully in the WSOP, because and then this goes into the whole GTO versus exploitative debate. But I think that the idea that it's a debate in the first place is ridiculous. And like Charlie Carroll, right? I mean, I think Charlie is an insanely smart person, and I think that the idea that he's able to beat high stakes to this day without using solvers is unbelievable, and it's a testament to his ability as a poker player. But he rejects the idea that a lot of the stuff that he does is theoretical, which it is, and I remember he'll like post on Twitter like some crazy hand where like he takes some line and heroes like some guy with like king high or something, and be like, plug this into your solver, and then somebody literally will, and then it just becomes like king high as a call.
You're right. So, I saw that too. It was hilarious.
I think Pads did it or something. Like Charlie tweeted it, and then Pads is like hey mate, like actually that's just a call.
Yeah.
Like but that's not to insult Charlie, right? It's actually the opposite. It's to compliment him on how incredible it is that he's able to, his brain is actually like,
Yeah.
it functions like a solver. It's inputs and outputs, and he's able to solve the game in real time, just so well. And so I think the idea of like what GTO is, right? Like theory is just inputs and outputs, right? And I think that like when you're playing in a different environment, you need to change the inputs. It's like what I was talking about with the payout structures. Like, why would I study for one tournament and plug in the wrong payout structure? It's ridiculous, right? So if I'm playing against some guy who's never bluffing the river, or let's say he's never bluffing in this spot, like I would node lock that he's never bluffing in this spot and look at the output. Like why like, and I don't think anyone that I like, literally anyone that I know, like all of my friends, everyone in their 20s, the Euro guys, the American guys, all the guys that use solvers, I don't think I know a single person who is going to play against some 65-year-old man who bets, who goes bet jam, and is going to think, oh, I have a really good bluff catcher, I have to call.
Yeah,
I don't think I know.
The blockers don't mean anything at that point, right?
Of course not. Like I don't. And then like there's a certain contingent of people who are like, yeah, but these solver nerds are gonna, like your blockers don't matter. And I feel like, yeah, we know, like
yeah.
But you also don't know how to play correctly. That's the counter.
That's the dynamic, you're right? Yeah.
So
I think having that baseline is so crucial, and I mean,
crucial.
I spoke to my friends about this before, and just like, you want to have that baseline and work from that to know where you should deviate from, like you said.
For sure. Yeah. I think, again, it's inputs and outputs. And it's like, there's a lot of guys who do some really cool things exploitatively, but they don't have that fundamental baseline. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're playing against really weak players where their strategies very face up, it's of course like, you don't have to be deep in solvers to be beating like a WPT main with like 2,000 players in the field or 1,500 players. Yeah. But if you do want to move up in stakes and you do play against people who protect their checking ranges and you play against people who do bluff the correct amount and you don't know where the fundamental baselines are, you're going to make huge mistakes on one side or the other, right? You're going to think, like imagine someone's never studied poker and they look at me and I go all in on the river. I mean, from a human perspective, people are going to lean towards massively overfolding or massively over bluff catching. And it's very difficult for someone who's not well studied to defend the adequate amount, right? And so what ends up happening is there's going to be people who look at me and they just don't believe me because they're just naturally incredulous. And against those people, it becomes relatively easy to pick up on that tendency rather quickly because of the types of hands they show down. And even I'm not a big live read guy, you could probably imagine, but I think there's a way that like someone just looks at you and you can just tell they don't believe you, and you can tell that every fiber of their being wants to call, and you should probably underbluff that guy. And then there's, the reverse is true as well. So, without having that baseline of being able to bluff catch the right amount, bluff catch, somewhat, the correct combos against someone like me, or someone who's well studied or just at least somewhat studied, they'll be able to quickly start adjusting and, inputs and outputs, like we say, over bluffing this guy and under bluffing this guy. And then it creates another thing. I saw Mike jam this hand, 3x pot as a river against this guy. So he's crazy, right? So I'm gonna, this guy's capable of bluffing. He's out of his mind. Now I'm gonna call against him. But really, I had like the read on this guy that he's gonna massively overfold. And against you, I'm never bluffing that, right? so it's like it's really, really difficult to play well without using solvers, and the human brain can only take you so far. So yeah.
So I guess just kind of get some final questions and final thoughts before we move on to the end. I want to get your thoughts on the whole Airball Berkey saga. I want to, you're a guy who's probably in the mix in these circles. What's been your thoughts?
Yeah, I did a Twitter space. I'm a super biased party here. I did a Twitter space the other night with like Landon and Melissa and the Solve for Why people. Like I said, I've done the Solve for Why podcast 3 times, and
you're on Team Berkey.
I'm Team Berkey, yeah. And also I had one counter. I've been pretty public on Twitter with my distaste for Mr. Nicholas Airball. Just as a, I'm not a huge fan of his. Listen, it's not that personal. We had one interaction that I didn't like. But
what happened?
Okay, long story short, this was at one of those HCL games, the post-stream games, and it was after the stream had ended, and it was four-handed at the time. And before I got there, it was four-handed. It was Mariano, Rampage, Airball, and Barry, I think is his name. I think Barry's his name. Do you know who I'm talking about? The like
Barry, the old guy.
There's two Barrys. He's like a black dude. His name might just not be Barry.
Right. I think I remember that stream though. I think I know the stream you're talking about. Yeah.
I think his name is Barry though. Again, because I only played with him that one time. Right. I didn't watch the stream too often, so I could be getting his name wrong actually. But it was that guy, Rampage, Airball, and Mariano. And Rampage was staying with me at the time in LA because I had a place in LA at the time and he didn't. Right. And so he came over to play Hustler and he was staying with me. And I came just to say what's up to him. We were going to get food after, and I had actually no intention of playing in the game. I didn't even bring money with me. So
there's a common trend here when you rock up to casinos not wanting to play and then end up sitting at a cash game.
100%. Yeah, true. Actually, I hadn't put that together. But I actually had, so they're playing 50, 100, right?
Right.
I had $0 on me. Like I came with no money. So Airball was stuck like 100K or something during the stream. And I walk into the set, like the stream area, and I say what's up to Rampage, I say what's up to Mariano. At that point, Airball didn't know who I was, and so he didn't know I was actually like friends with Rampage and to some extent Mariano, and that I was there just to see them and get food after they're done playing because the game was about to break, and the game was four-handed, so I was like, maybe just pop a seat, and Barry actually was the one, the recreational, like the biggest whale in the game was the one, and he didn't know who I was either, so it's not like he liked me specifically, but he was just like, oh, now if he plays, it's five-handed, he just wanted more people in the game. So he was like, hey, do you want to take a seat? And Airball all of a sudden is like, no fucking way, get this fucking kid out of here, he's here to snipe. God. So he was just like, he was straight up berating me. Wow. And he was like, you're no way you're sniping the game, like this kid's not playing, whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm not even here to snipe the game. Like, I don't even want to. I don't even have money on me. Like, I didn't, I didn't.
He just started doing this tirade before
he went on a tirade. He went on a tirade before I had even sat down. Right. And then something clicked in my head where I was like, no, fuck this guy. Now I want to play. Like
the competitive. It's that tennis background. It's the esports. It's like, all right, now I want to win.
So then Barry spotted me $5,000 and Ethan spotted me $5,000 and stuff. So I ended up buying in for like 10K. And actually I lost like queens. Barry was drunk and like he was V-pipping like literally 85%. And like he would take an indiscriminate amount of chips pre-flop and just dump them in the middle. Like as a 3-bet. So like raise, he would literally just boom, literally throw them like this and just dump like, you would raise to like 300. It's just like now it's 3,400, and it's just like, so I remember he did that against me and I had queens and I had like 10K effective because I had no money like in front of me. So I was like, okay, I'm all in, and he had kings and he stacked me. And then and it was like insane. And it wasn't an angle because he did that just like all the time, like with all the hands, like he would like show like 7-3 off, like over and over. So it was kind of funny. So I lost like 10K. But then I rebought and I won a couple pots and then I ended up losing like smaller, like whatever. I lost a few thousand, like totally like whatever. And then but Airball was being like a dick. And my thing was, it was off stream. Like it wasn't like he was just being a dick. Like he didn't have all
these things we keep hearing about how he's just doing this as a character and actually off stream he's like a really nice guy. That doesn't really match up to that.
Okay, so he was a dick, but he sort of knew he was a dick, and afterward he came up to me and he apologized. And he was like, listen, man, I'm sorry, I was stuck, whatever. And I was like, yeah, it's fine, I don't really care. Because I'm not gonna I didn't even know who this guy was at the time. Like this is like early 2022. So this is like before he had blown up and before he became like a rag on Hustler. So I didn't know who he was and I didn't care. Right? I was just like, I'm never gonna see this guy again. I kind of whatever, it's fine.
Little did you know.
Little did I know, he's inescapable. So I don't that's my only experience with him. And I
Right.
don't want to make it seem like I have like this insane personal vendetta. Like honestly, I don't like wish malice upon the guy or anything
Of course,
crazy.
yeah. I don't think anyone does. I think it's more just like
Yeah, I just
it's more
don't
of a
want to.
poker thing, right?
He's just like annoying, and my
Mm.
biggest problem with it is I think that he's succeeded in his endeavor, right, to become a reg and have a permanent seat in these games.
Mm.
And I don't like the idea that you get to berate people and be an asshole to everyone, and that is how you secure that seat. Like I think it sets a bad precedent.
Yeah,
And I think like Ginge, for example, is a super nice guy.
yeah,
Uh and he can't get a seat in these games. But
yeah,
if he started getting absolutely hammered and berating women and doing this type of stuff, maybe it would be good content and maybe he would get invited back. And that's a really sort of gross reality for me that
yeah.
sort of turns me off of that whole scene in the first place.
It's a really
Uh,
good like point, and I think it's something like again, if I had more time with Ryan, I probably would have brought that kind of aspect up. As in, so people had to go at Garrett for maybe the way he was towards some of the players, and maybe like the fact that if someone went to the toilet, he make them post when they got back. But I don't see what Airball does is that much better. I think him shouting at people, grabbing Berkey's chips in the high stakes game, that kind of behavior.
it's gross, yeah.
Yeah, I don't, and also I don't know how many people actually like it. When you're actually watching these streams, I think
Yeah.
it's like watching a car crash. I don't think people are there like rooting for it. They just I want to see it. It's like natural
I
human
think
behavior.
it's yeah, I mean it's a spectacle, right? And
Yeah,
I think there is for sure an initial like allure to it, and I think that people do want to see the car crash at first, but it's just because it's so larger than life crazy and like such a disaster that like you want to see it. But
yeah,
once you've seen it, you've seen it. And like I don't feel compelled to keep tuning in to watch Airball.
yeah,
Maybe if there's a specific lineup that like it wouldn't be because Airball's there, right?
mm,
And from what you saw on social media, and even from just like the stream comments on Poker Go, as that high stakes poker stream was running, I don't think people like pros, recreationals, anyone really liked it. I think,
yeah. It's a bit
uh,
gross to watch, right?
yeah. So that's sort of just like my 2 cents on that. And
Yeah,
obviously, like Berkey specifically has been amazing to me. Like he's had me over at the house a bunch just to hang out, and he's just been
mm,
like I mean he's been Berkey is such a stand up guy,
yeah,
and say whatever you want about his poker play. Because there's definitely there's a couple spots where I'm like, what are you doing? But
yeah, yeah,
no, seriously, I love Berkey, and he's just like such a genuinely good person. I think a
mm,
lot of times, as people, we I don't know if I mean you probably have had this, right, where you can look at someone and you can look at someone in the eyes and you can just sort of tell like this is a good guy, like this is a
yeah,
you have like a good feeling about this person, right?
yeah,
And I definitely have a good feeling about Berkey and all of the people in that crew. I think they're real. Like Landon he's a really good dude, and he's a good friend of
mm,
mine, and Melissa, Conrad, like all those all of them. So
yeah. Great
um,
bunch.
great bunch. So compared to sort of like the really like EV hunting LA cash guys, I mean it's sort of night and day in my mind, at least in terms of who's the good guy here and who's the bad guy. You know,
Yeah,
um,
it's a good point. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that I think I don't. Are they playing today or is it next week? They're kicking back on
I have
again
no idea.
because they postponed the last one. I don't even know what's going
I
on.
have
But
no idea. You might want to get Landon on and
yeah.
ask him that. Yeah,
So we'll wrap this up. But I guess the good
sure.
point is: are you going to be streaming the scoop? Are you going to be like
I don't think
putting anything else
so.
on? Right.
I think right now I'm I'm sort of keeping up with appearances a little bit, right, by coming on here and doing the GG stuff,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there is definitely benefit for me having like a platform in poker and having a brand, and so I am cognizant of that, and I do try to keep that up to some extent, but I do think like this scoop I'm gonna be pretty focused on playing, and
Right.
I think it's pretty minus EV to have to just give everyone cards up for a
Saying that,
month.
that's why I think from one of my favorite probably tournament player, believe it, I think it's Ben CB. I think the
Yeah,
guy is just how much of a sicko do you have to be to play all that 10K, 25Ks and more, and just like show your whole cards, explain your thought process, and still winning these games. I think
yeah.
that's
I
such
mean,
like an underrated thing he does.
one thing I'll say about Ben CB is like he hit his graphs, right? So
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I think he's probably losing or something because I don't know, like how can you be winning and showing your whole cards or whatever. And then he's like, no, actually, I'll just unhide my graphs now. And his GG graph is just like he's up like 1.5 million on GG, and he's up like a bunch of stuff. And it's like, oh, he's actually just sick. And so like massive respect to Ben CB. I mean, he's got I think the way he thinks about the game is super, super good. Mm-hmm. It's like very theoretically based, but it's not just mindlessly memorizing solver outputs. Like there's the thought that goes into every hand and every detail is outstanding. So
I think what you said, and there's a lot of like crossover between what you talked about the baseline GTO and then making those adjustments and exploitations.
Sure.
I think he's one of the guys that does it perfectly, exactly like you said.
All of the top players try to find that balance.
Of course,
and so
awesome. But and you're going to be in Vegas. Is this your first summer series in Vegas?
Second. I did last one. Yeah.
Right. Cool. It's my first one. I'm going to be there 2 weeks. Nice. Mid-June to early July.
Sweet.
For a couple of events. You know, I'm mainly going for cash, to be honest, just for like roll purposes. I don't really have the roll to start firing like multiple 600s and 1Ks, but cash seems like pretty juicy. So I'll hit you when we're there. Maybe do some more media stuff.
Sure.
I might be doing some stuff with other people too, so it should be cool. Yeah,
sounds good, man.
All right, thank you guys. Mike, do you want to let them know where you can find you? All your social media stuff.
Twitter at Mike Jozoff and Instagram at Michael Jozoff, and that's about it. I think should have some cool stuff coming out. I think I'm coming out with a course that's going to be dropping hopefully it's a long time from now. I mean, it takes a while to get these things developed. 2024 is when that course is coming out. Just hopefully I win some stuff in the World Series, and
we'll keep an eye on Scoop, and then hopefully we'll see you get a bracelet.
Yeah,
nice one.
Yeah.
Cheers, Mike.
Right,
Thank
man.
you.
For sure, man. Have a good one.